Hello and welcome to this lecture on cellular injury. We will discuss the definition and factors in this video. So, the cell injury is defined as the effect of variety of stresses due to etiological agents, a cell encounter resulting in its internal and external environment. So, after reading this definition, there will be few questions that will become in your mind. If you see this definition, the questions that will arise is what is meant by variety of stress? Then, what are the etiological agents? Which cells affected by etiological agents? Because they mention stress due to etiological agents are cell encounters. So this question will come in your mind that which cell will be affected by the etiological agents. Then what will be the internal and external changes in the environment? So these four questions that will come in your mind, and let give you the answers one by one. So number one is stress. When we talk about the stress, then we need to understand there are three different type of stress that happen to the cellular structures. We can divide them into three subdivisions. Number one, physical stress. Number two, chemical stress. Number three, infectious stress. Let's give some example of all of these stress. When we talk about the physical stress, we usually talk about the mechanical traumas. Mechanical trauma. When we talk about chemical stress, it could be caused because of the poison, drug, acid, or alkali. When we talk about infectious stress, we're talking about infections caused by bacteria or viruses. There are some more stress that are also considered as stress. I'm only mentioned the three main stresses. The other type of stresses we can classify as nutritional stress, such as lack of vitamin D or any vitamins, starvation or anemia. Then we have immunological factors, which is also one of the stress factors. Immunological factors such as autoimmune disorder. We will discuss them later on in detail later on. So according to the definition, we're going back to the definition again. We're talking first the variety of stresses. The stresses could be physical stress, mechanical stress, like then we have chemical stress such as poison, drugs, acid, or alkali, or we have infectious stress like bacteria such as E. coli, Staphylococcus bacteria, Streptococcus bacteria. We will discuss them later on. Or viruses like such. Right now we have the problem like COVID-19, coronavirus is a virus. So they are all kind of stresses. Then we have some other kind of stress like nutritional stress, like vitamins, or a patient is anemic, starvation. Then immunological factors which such as autoimmune disorders. We will discuss them detail later on. Now next question is, what are the etiological agents? What are the etiological agents? According to the definitions, they are all known as biological pathogens. Biological pathogens such as bacteria, viruses. They are all known as etiological agents. It could be a fungus or parasite. The next question is, which cell affected by etiological agents? Which cells affected by etiological agents? So the answer is, there are different kind of cells that are present inside the body, such as epithelial cells. We have skeletal muscle cells. Then we have nerve cells. Then we have blood cells like red blood cells, RBCs, or white blood cells, WBCs, or we have platelets. Then next question is, for example, when we talk about the coronavirus, the virus we know COVID-19, it can enter into the body through nose or mouth, eyes, and then it attached to the epithelial cells of the airways. And then it bind to the receptor known as ACE2. For this, I can show you one website, and I'm showing you one example about coronavirus. This is the New York Times article on science, where we're talking about how coronavirus hijack your cells. Because we're talking about the cells, and we're talking about any cells can be affected by etiological agent. In case of coronavirus, we have the virus that is affecting the cell. If we see, take a look on this article, they're talking about SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus that can spread through your nose, through your mouth, through your eyes. And when you see this coronavirus, you can see this structure. It contains protein, it contains the material, nuclear material. It also contains the spike proteins. And then you see that how it affecting the cells, especially the cells of the airways, epithelial cells, through this receptor. We call it as angiotensin converting enzyme 2, ACE2. We're not discussing the receptors in this topic, but you have to understand that the virus entered into your body through nose, through respiratory system, or through your eyes, and then it bind to your airways through the receptor. And after then, when it bind to the receptor, you can see it goes inside the cell, and then it unwrap its viral RNA. This viral RNA is then responsible for hijacking the nuclear material, and it is responsible for making multiple copies of the viruses. And then it produces a multiple viral proteins and produces a number of new copies of the viruses, and that is why it is responsible to spread the disease so fast. So this is a simple example of the current scenario, that a coronavirus affecting the cells, epithelial cells of the airways, and how it entered into the body, and how it producing the stress, and how it affect us. So if we go back to the definition, we're talking about variety of stresses that we discusses. It could be physical, it could be chemical, it could be uh, infectious, due to etiological agents. What are the etiological agents? The bacteria and virus are the etiological agents. A cell encounters which cell get affected. The cell could be epithelial cell, it could be skeletal cells, it could be nerve cells. Then resulting a change in its internal and external environment. How it changes the internal or external environment, like for example, in case of coronavirus, it bind with the receptor, and then it hijack the cell and producing the viral copies of coronavirus or COVID-19. And then when you sneeze, it expel out and it affect the other person. So the other environment, the outside, is the external environment. Internally is producing the changes inside the cell by binding with the receptor. So this is how the cellular injury is defined and can be explained easily to you. Then in the next slide, we're talking about the factors. The cellular response to stress may varies depending upon two variables. Number one is the host factor, and number two is factors pertaining to injurious agents. When we talk about host factor, it means patient. Host is actually a patient, and a patient having different type of cells and tissues involved in it. Like in case of coronavirus, we're talking about the epithelial cells that is involved in this disease. Then when we talk about the factors pertaining to injurious agents, we're talking about the extent and type of cellular injury. In case of coronavirus, when we talk about extent and type of cellular injury, it depends upon the how much it producing the effect. Like COVID-19 is classified into mild, moderate, severe, or critically ill. Sign and symptoms. So the coronavirus could be the mild, it could be moderate, it could be severe, it could be critically ill. So this is the extent of the injury caused by the coronavirus or COVID-19. And then type of cellular injury. When we talk about the cellular injuries, like in case of COVID-19, patients that are critically ill, like in the last stage, when we're talking about the last stage, how it producing the effect. So right now that such is going on COVID-19, and they are talking about the patient that are critically ill, why they get died because of the cytokinin release. They also term as cytokinin syndrome. They are actually known as inflammatory mediators, but because the patient that are critically ill, such as in case of COVID-19, and the person is continuously exposed to the virus because of generation of multiple copies of viral virus, it can trigger cytokinin to release again and again, which lead to cytokinin syndrome. And because of continuous trigger of cytokinin, it can affect the lung and can lead to lung injury. And that lung injury is because of the prolonged activation of neutrophils. And what are neutrophils? I have mentioned inside the slides, inside a video. They are also known as inflammatory mediators. We will discuss in detail later on in the upcoming lectures. Then in the next slide, we're talking about different type of cellular responses, such as cellular adaptation, reversible injuries, irreversible injuries. If we go to the next slide, we can see that the normal cell, here we can see the normal cell, can be adapted into different pathological forms, such as atrophy, hypertrophy, hyperplasia, metaplasia, dysplasia. What are these terms? We will discuss in our upcoming lectures. These all are known as different adaptations and that occur to the normal cells. Why? Because of the stress or any pathogen. But when we remove that stress, the cell will be restored to the normal cell. So thank you so much for today's lecture. Hope to see you again in our upcoming lectures.